Hi Chris, how are you?
Good afternoon, Rod. Yeah, I'm well. Here we are, episode 172. It's the 12th of May, still 2025. And it's muggy where I live, muggy. But you might have some nice sun by the looks of it in the back.
It's been slightly overcast, really, I think is probably the best way to say. We had a little bit of rain yesterday, only a tiny bit. They keep getting warnings of thunderstorms, but they don't come to anything. So yeah, sun's still out mostly, but more clouds than there has been.
Yeah, we've had a bit of that, but it's going to be hot this week. I can't wait because I've got some of the week off, so I'm going to look forward to reading my book, sat in the garden, having a non-tech time, I think.
A non-tech time, we'll have to try and change that with some cool links. Immediate follow-up, before we get into proper follow-up, have you got a picture of the chickens this week?
I haven't got a picture of the chickens, and because of the joy of using a webcam built into your monitor, you can't just turn the camera around to point over there, so that's pretty rubbish, isn't it? I have to sort something out for next week.
Yep. Either recording for the podcast listeners that they can hear some clucking, evidence of chickenry, or a nice picture for the video folk.
Yeah,
but,
you may get chicken noises. They're not usually too bad, and hopefully I'm further enough away.
Chicken noises. As long as a fox doesn't get anywhere near them, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, hopefully we've got enough protection in place for that.
Good stuff. Shall we go into follow-up proper then?
Yeah, let's do it. There's one big topic to talk about this week.
Yeah, that's for the main show. But for follow-up, I think we've got the immediate appeal that Apple put into the Supreme Court, or the Circuit Court, I should say, following the decision last week where we talked about fairly heavily on the podcast that Judge Gonzalez had said, you've got to stop doing this now, you've got to allow people to link out. There's certainly been a flurry of people talking about it on podcasts I've listened to, as well as announcements for things like Spotify, Patreon, and others as talked about last week. But Apple have put in this appeal, I guess. I don't know how many times, because there are an infinite number of appeals they can put in against this. Yeah,
and I don't know how many appeals you can have or how quickly they have to respond, because I was just thinking about it now. They've appealed last week, but we've not heard anything. And I do love American documentation. Like, you get very distinct font, I think, on the first page you just showed. And I don't know what that font is, but it's a font of, it's a certain sort of font, isn't it? You see that quite often on official documentation. But I don't know how often they can appeal. But like I said, I don't know what the timeline is now. Like, because they're appealing it, but they've already allowed apps. Apple have complied with the law, and then they've appealed the law at the same time. So it's a tricky one, isn't it?
Which is what they said they were going to do. You know, they did say that they're going to. The court said you've got to stop doing this. They stopped doing this. They said they were going to appeal. They appealed. I mean, it's been interesting listening to some of the commentary about this because, as we said last week, it's been overwhelmingly positive from users like us, developers like Marco Arment and others, Riley, saying this is a great thing. Users think it's fantastic that there's this option. You know, people like Patreon and Spotify. I'm ignoring Epic slightly for a little bit. I think we'll come back to Epic, but it's been universally welcomed that this is the right thing to do. And the more you think about it, that putting a link in your app to say you can go somewhere else to buy this, Apple claiming that this is costing them money is absolutely ridiculous. You've always been able to go to the web to buy, other services and costs. Let's face it, the App Store is a fancy front end in many cases for the web anyway. And it beggars belief slightly that they're pushing back against it so hard. And I really, really don't think Apple have come out of this with any sort of positive feeling at all. None of this is for security or privacy of their users. It's all about their bottom line, and that appeals, services revenue.
So getting through the document then, you can see, as you've highlighted, the areas that Apple are pushing back on because they feel these things are new and have built upon the original case. And, originally the court said to Apple, you can't take 30% for everything. So Apple did, okay, well, if you link out, you can have 27% to pay to us, and you can have one link in your app and it can't be a generated link. And then now the court's come back on, you can't, bill like that, and you must let them link to whatever they want and put in whatever links they want and just get on with it, kind of thing. And Apple's now pushing back on that because what they're saying here is, it's changed because it's you're now not allowed any commission fee, which Apple obviously feels unjust because they still provide the platform, and they can't, audit and monitor and track the purchases that are happening outside the App Store, which I do agree with. I don't think Apple should be monitoring and tracking that. That's somebody else's business. That makes perfect sense. And then you can't restrict or condition developers' language. I quite like that use of word condition in their language, i.e. that, it's obviously in reference to all the scare screens that we've had before, whereas Apple's been very clear. Developers can't say, if you buy direct from me, it's better for me. You're not going through Apple and therefore I get more money, etc., etc. So it's very interesting how the two are pushing against each other. And I wonder how long it's going to take to see some resolution here, or at least get feedback.
It's weird, isn't it? I mean, we've heard stories in the week that it was in the injunction and we missed it, that about Apple's internal Slacks and emails and developers being tasked with making the scare screens scarier. That it not only sitting, this app will be on an external website, but putting the developer's name in there as well. So, and then Tim Cook going, yeah, go further, put another warning in and all the rest of it. And nobody, I mean, the developers, fair enough, it's their job to work for Apple to do as they're told. Fine. But that sort of top-down approach of make it scarier, make it more worrying, link to an external website, so the customer's website, the developer's website. Websites aren't that scary. People are used to going to websites.
They are. A lot of people will do anything they can to buy something, but it just didn't seem in the spirit of Apple trying to do the right thing for their consumers at all. And obviously, like you say, it comes from the top down. So, it's going to be interesting to see where we go with this. But like we've already said at the top, so Apple have allowed apps through in America that will link out, but obviously they're trying to get pushback so they can revoke that change and go back to how it was before until they get an agreement that's, I guess Apple is going to try and get somewhere in the middle so they get some revenue income from it and have some control over it, but not the revenue and or the control they had before.
And I don't think they should ever have had this amount of control, really. It's just horrifying how much they think they're entitled to. Fair enough, they made the tools, they made all the rest of it. But imagine they'd only gone for like 4% for external purchases or something. To me, it just shows the lack of regard that they hold developers and others in, that they think anything that happens on an Apple platform belongs to them. Netflix have their own website, Netflix have their own hosting, Netflix sort out their own deals, Netflix manage their own payment. If Netflix were still taking any sort of payment other than Netflix is a thing that exists outside of the App Store, imagine how much money they'd be paying Apple on that for their business.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And it's, like you say, it's such a high percentage. It could have worked if Apple had reached a more suitable figure. And they originally were running the App Store as a break-even business, whereas it's clearly gone from break-even to, replacing other declining profit areas. So it's not good, is it?
No, it's really not. And I think Accidental Tech Podcast said it better when, they're all delighted. Gruber, Arment, Liss, all delighted in the fact that this happened. And that, again, as I said a minute ago, echoes what everybody else is feeling, that this is only right. If Apple's in-app purchase was of a level that a Stripe or somebody like that was using to capture credit card payments, it would have been fine. Nobody would have batted an eyelid. And in fact, even if it had been a little bit higher, people would have gone with the convenience of just using the thing that was built in, and that would have been enough for them. They would still have made a couple of percent on top of it, the same way as most credit card, in between companies would have done, and they'd still have had a nice revenue thing, and they wouldn't have all this resentment that's built up from big corporate customers, from small developers that feeling they've been taken for granted, and from people like us that just feels like Apple is not in. They're a big company. They were never really in our interests, but made great products because of, they put the best that they could into them, not the most minimal in order to extract the most profit from us. And I think that's where this gets all quite uncomfortable, is whatever else is they're doing with the DMA and whatever scummy ways that they're acting in, it's that taking us for granted and screwing every last cent/penny out of us that feels so bad.
Yeah, it's a pity in a way. Apple haven't turned around and gone, right, we're going to embrace it. Yep. You're right. There's been an error in our ways over the last few years. We're going to do this everywhere. We're going to do it right and do the best thing for our customers. Yeah. They're not doing that. They're not taking that stance. They could have got some really good mileage out of this.
Yeah, and the consequence of that is you begin to see things like this, where a developer has begun to, they started the process of, okay, we lost lots of money due to this. We couldn't bring people to our website and we were paying you. So this could be the beginning of a class action lawsuit where this company, Pure Sweat Basketball, whatever that is seeking class action status to represent other affected iOS developers. So anybody that's potentially lost money to this commission thing, I don't know how far this will go, and it will obviously depend on appeal, but it opens the floodgates potentially to billions of dollars of lost revenue that have gone to Apple at some point, even though they've had their own legitimate businesses elsewhere that they weren't even allowed to mention in the app. And again, I don't have a lot of sympathy for Apple. They've got all the money in the world.
They've got all the money and they've got too greedy. and they're not doing the right thing. So I completely agree with you.
Yep. And so, again, just another sort of on topic but off to the side type thing. This is what always should have happened inside of the Kindle app. And we still don't have this in the UK. That Amazon now has a Get Book button in its Kindle app. So you can click on this, it takes you to the Amazon website, which you're presumably already logged into. You click the button, you can download the book. Exactly the way it should always have been.
Yep, it's bonkers, isn't it, that this hasn't been there before. So it's a simple change, and I agree with you, it should have always been there. And it's hard to explain to your friends, like, why can't I just buy the book in Amazon? Why are Amazon being silly? It's like, it's not Amazon, it's Apple. So, no, this is great, and this is just one very small example of how the usability for the customer is so much more improved. And it's the same with Spotify. They can now show you the different plans in the app, and you can check out in the app. I don't think most customers really care whether they go to the website just to complete the payment or not. It's minor, isn't it?
No, but imagine all Apple charged was 5% instead of 30% or whatever it is for people that make over $1 million. This would have been not an issue. Most companies would have just gone, all right, that's just the cost of doing business. We'll leave it on Apple's platform. There would have been ones, obviously, that would have said, absolutely not, we're not giving anything else to Apple. But I just think it's fascinating. Another thing I think is fascinating is how the community is beginning to push for the removal of Tim Cook and some of the senior leadership team within Apple. So this is a piece in Hypercritical, which is John Syracuse's blog. He always writes quite thoughtful pieces. He's been a long-time Mac fan. Probably the longest-term Mac fan, with the possible exception of John Gruber, that I listen to podcasts from, actually.
I think he actually predates him. But I'd agree with you on this. He writes thoughtful pieces and doesn't often publicly criticise like this written down. And it's an interesting piece, isn't it? And he's admitted before he's not one to call for somebody to leave a company. He's definitely calls for people to change decisions, and I would agree with him. I'm not normally somebody that calls for somebody to leave, but it does feel like they need a different era now, a different North Star, because the current one isn't the right one. Yeah,
and you see that in the takes from Luca Maestri and the finance team rather than than Schiller and other people within it. This is the law. We're breaking the law if we do this, and you can see what's happening as a consequence. And it is a thoughtful piece, and to be fair to John, he goes through all the things that have sort of gone wrong over Tim Cook's tenure, broken keyboards, sort of questionable things with the DMA and all the rest of it. But all those things are straws on the camel's back, and this sort of final thing for taking this approach appears to be the thing. And it is interesting, and success hides problems. Of course it does. Tim Cook has led Apple through the most successful financial period in its history, and that's saying something when you think of how meteoric the company has been. And the iPhone that Steve Jobs introduced, not Tim Cook, but Tim Cook has made it truly profitable. The feeling, and we sort of talked about this a minute ago, and it's interesting that Syracuse, he says it better than we can, but it's interesting the way that has gone, that you've gone from being the most successful person, the shareholders are happy, but the rot has begun underneath it all. And we're not going to make any difference to this. Tim Cook's not going to step down because we're unhappy with this. The shareholders might make him, the board might make him, but it could be a good time to go. He takes the bullet for this, moves on, and Apple could very quickly turn this around.
Yeah, it does feel though like a lot of the long-standing people at Apple have been there a long time, and they just need a different culture at the top to breed the right culture, underneath them in essence. So I do feel it's time for something different. And don't get me wrong, I think Tim has got a lot right at Apple, and his tenure, we've got Apple Silicon coming back to the Mac, and the life that the Mac's now got is so different than what it was. And there's been a lot of fantastic products. There's just been a few missteps, haven't there? And I think it's time for something else now. Stop chasing the money, chase the good products. That's what you're here for, and the rest will come.
It's hard to say stop chasing the money when you've got as addicted to it. And the company that almost went under because it didn't have money obviously wants still to be the most cash-rich company in the world. You don't see them investing that money in developers, products, new innovative things, obviously. Certainly not in software updates. So, what are they doing with it? Are they just sitting on it? Or are they like Scrooge McDuck and jumping into the big pile of money? I don't know.
I think they're just sitting on it. What they should have done, I think, is slowly wean themselves off the App Store commissions. Whereas what they've had now is they've had, quarter-on-quarter graphs going up and up and up. And what they should have done was slowly wean them off. So maybe they were still going up, but they were taking, they were starting to bring the percentages down with the economies of scale of the App Store. And then it would have been a much, smoother transition from 30% fees maybe down to 10%, the state 10%, rather than it now going from 3% to nothing, and all of a sudden that bar is just going to drop like a stone.
Yeah, particularly if you look at Google having to drop their money to them potentially as well. I mean, who knows how badly some of these products are doing. I reckon the whole sort of wearables line, for example, is largely AirPods. It's not the Apple Watch that drives that, it's AirPods. Do we look at this services revenue and realise it's this artificial inflation of what's been going with it, rather than, it's just amazing everybody's subscribing to Apple TV Plus and the music and everything else that comes along as part of services? I wouldn't bet against it.
No, I'd agree with you.
Something else I wouldn't bet against is Brazilian courts changing their mind. So we've been talking about this on and off the last couple of weeks as well. First, Apple were going to have to do it the next day, and then they weren't, and then the sideloading had to be allowed, and then it wasn't, and they sort of appealed it, and it went to and fro. The long and the short of it, though, is, again, they've reversed, and now they're demanding that Apple allows sideloading within 90 days. I don't think we need to dwell very long on this. It's just they're flip-flopping a bit, aren't they, Brazil?
They are. I think Apple need to just allow sideloading everywhere. They just need to apply their policies worldwide now, because they've realised that this fragmented business just isn't going to work, and they're just going to get beaten around by all the courts, and it just seems a stupid way of them doing business.
Well, they're going to just get legislated out. Again, they can afford it. They've obviously made a calculation somewhere that it's in their interest to hold on to every single last potential way that they can to not give up this revenue.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. Just be the bigger person in the room and go, right, tackle it head on, like you say, otherwise it's just going to be nickel and dimed for every legislation change in every country. It just seems ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, we'll watch Brazil with interest, because if Brazil falls and then South Korea is next to fall, the EU has already fallen, then hopefully the UK is somewhere on that list.
It does feel like we are on the lesser Apple platform at the moment.
It certainly does. Someone that's been on the lesser Apple platform for some time is Epic Games. This just sort of to underscore what we were saying a minute ago, is that they have submitted an update to bring Fortnite back to the US App Store. This is quite different from the language that Tim Sweeney was using before, where he was saying, we're going to be back in the US App Store. Well, no, they were going to use their Swedish developer account to try and get Fortnite back again. I don't think this is going to happen. I think Apple is one to hold a grudge, and unless they're actually legislated to do this, they're not going to let Epic back in.
I'm curious on this one. I have a child who very much enjoys Fortnite. I know we're not going to be getting Fortnite here in the UK at the moment. I'm quite happy that Fortnite's not on their iPhones, but equally it's hard to explain to them when they go, why isn't it on the iPhone? It used to be on there. My friends have it on Android. So this is an odd one. I think this should happen, but I'm curious to know where Apple are going to go with this, because are they going to just dig their heels in? It feels like, could they be the bigger person and just eat some humble pie? That would be nice to see, I think.
I agree with you. I think they should be the bigger person. We've said before, Tim Sweeney isn't necessarily the nicest guy. It feels like he's on the side of right on this one, but if he had the monopoly, I don't think he'd be behaving any differently to Apple. That might be slanderous, so he may not, allegedly. I'll throw in a few of them just to be on the right side. But this is crazy. You've got one of the biggest games in the world that kids want to play, that adults want to play as well, and you're deliberately withholding it from your platform because basically. It's not a sound business decision. That
I completely agree with you. It's bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're missing out on money. I mean, let's face it. In that scenario we talked about before, they were charging 2% for these purchases, or 5%, or actually even anything less than 15%. Most developers would have just sucked it up and gone on with it. We wouldn't be having this fight now, and Apple would still be making, as you said a minute ago, tons of money.
All the money. I think I could probably elevate it to all the money.
Yeah, all the money. Anyway, I think that's it for follow-up. Shall we dive into some news?
Yeah, it's been quite a quiet week, hasn't it?
It has been a quiet week. So this week, first in the news, Apple have rolled out Apple Pay support on the PlayStation 5. I don't know if you've seen this on your PlayStation.
I don't buy a lot on my PlayStation. I must confess, I actually use the app to check out on my iPhone. But just thinking about that, I can buy stuff on my PlayStation without Apple taking 30%. That's interesting, isn't it? So I often use that app. And this is what Apple need to do if they want to shore up the services revenue. Get Apple Pay everywhere, and then they cream a bit off the top of every transaction that way. But it is interesting. They do seem to have a good relationship with Sony, because they obviously got Apple Music on there. There's Apple TV on the PlayStation 5. Apple Pay kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, and there was that rumor that they were going to bring the DualShock, whatever it is, 6-axis, whatever it is, controller to Apple Vision Pro as well to manage games. So there is obviously some sort, and of course Sony make cameras for the iPhone.
Yeah. So I wonder what happened there though. Why the DualShocks didn't come to Vision Pro? But there does seem to be a special relationship between the two companies a little bit.
I think the DualShocks didn't come to Vision Pro because nobody buys a Vision Pro gaming on because nobody buys a Vision Pro, and there's no developers to make games because they don't feel trusted.
Yeah, fair.
I think it's pretty simple. Moving on, we've talked about him before. David Heinemeier Hansen, who is the developer that came up with Ruby on Rails, has also had many run-ins with Apple over the years. Not the least of which was them trying to charge him for his Hey calendaring email program. I think we did speak about that about 2.5 years ago. So in line with his removing big companies from, big companies are in his way really when he's trying to develop his services, he realized how much he was spending on Amazon Web Services, and I think that's probably related to what we've talked about with Broadcom. Is that right? Broadcom and VMware and Omnicia and all that kind of stuff as well. Anyway, the long and the short of it is 37 Signals, his company, is moving back to on-premises stuff rather than paying for Amazon Web Services. And it appears he's making quite the saving.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this because I think a lot of companies gone to cloud because it's very flexible. You can ramp it up and down. There's a lot of sense for it. You don't need to run data centers and have those skills. But it is very expensive. So I'm not surprised we've seen a company go, actually, hang on, I'm going to row the other way, put it all back. And I'm not surprised they're going to make some big savings. Now, you do need to spend some capital outlay to do this, but obviously accountants can make that work for a company. I don't think this is the last story we're going to see around this, because I think big tech, again, they're making huge money out of these virtual data centers. So I'm not surprised to see this, and it's eye-watering numbers.
They are. So they spent $1.5 million on buying servers capable of running 18 petabytes of storage, but then it will cost less than $200,000 a year to operate. That's presumably power, switching out drives, swapping out the odd server here and there, all that kind of stuff. A savings of $1.3 million a year. So if that kit only lasts a couple of years, you've already saved enough. It's quite an insane saving, really, and just shows what the big cloud providers can do. And he probably had quite a good sweetheart deal with Amazon Web Services because of who he is and the kind of company he runs. And you don't need those skills that the developers have to build, the arcane ways of working with Amazon Web Services. What you're working with is software platforms and technologies that you're familiar with as a company, which can only be a good thing.
One thing just to note, though, he did get a nice deal with that Amazon to exit, because normally you have to pay egress fees to exit. They managed to get those waived before they did all this. So there is a thing here. It's not just the cost of renting a system, there's the cost of leaving. And fair play, he managed to get that negated.
We do keep saying how much does it cost to buy your way out.
Yeah, it's something you really have to consider.
And it's literally that. And I was reading this story and it was sort of amusing to myself. Microsoft, ChatGPT, Perplexity, all these companies make use of open source tools, which is fine. The licensing allows you to do that. All they do is they lash them together in a very clever way and make them work with one another. Do you think any of the funding that they're making, the tens of billions of dollars, are going back to supporting the open source projects that these things are built and based on?
No.
How scandalous is that, really?
Yeah, no, agreed.
Your whole software platform is built on one little thing that's an Apache web server or a particular open source project that did some of your LLM training, and you're not going to give even a cent of that back, and all of them are just Apple in waiting at this point, possibly worse.
Yeah, no, I think you're quite right as usual.
I'm not always right, but it made me think. Another thing that made me think: do you realise how many audio suppliers that Samsung actually owns?
No, until you put this link in our show notes, my mind was blown away, because some of these products I actually quite like, and I'm amazed by this. So what you're saying here is Samsung have acquired Bowers Wilkins, Denon, Marantz, and I don't know who Polk are, but they've acquired them, which is quite a lot of names. And yet they've already got JBL and Harman Kardon and AKG. I'm amazed they've been allowed to do this. Surely competitions and mergers authorities have gone, whoa, you can't own everything.
Well, these are some of the biggest names in audio, and Polk are also, a well-known audio brand, I think largely in America. But you missed two out there, JBL, Harman Kardon, and AKG as well are also part of the Samsung brand. Samsung already made speakers. You know, they made smart speakers and all the rest.
They've got quite a good name in their own right.
In and of their own, yeah. And you could understand an electronics company that makes televisions and stereos and things like that wanting to improve their audio. But B&W, one of the biggest British audio manufacturers, you know, highly regarded British audio manufacturers, Denon and Marantz, two of the biggest Japanese regarded audio manufacturers. I think Polk are American. Harman Kardon, I think, were American, but AKG were a German company that made terrific headphones. In fact, the more I think of it, the more I think I knew about AKG, because the engineers that worked for AKG went and started another Austrian company called Austrian Audio or something. And I've got a pair of their headphones, and they sound like AKG's used to. But this is incredible for Samsung to be owning all these brands.
I can't believe that they own all of these and nobody knew about it. It's one of the best kept secrets.
It really is. Although, you know, these filings are open, aren't they? But talk about taking over a small corner of the world.
Yeah, they've got loads, haven't they? Can you imagine how many different speakers Samsung must produce and sell in a year under all their different brands?
Well, we thought Apple was crazy buying Beats when they all made speakers and things, but this is a whole different level.
Maybe they got Beats just to stop Samsung having it.
Maybe. In sad news, and I don't know how you feel about this, probably not too sad, but the Linux kernel is about to drop 486 and very early Pentium support from the kernel. Oh.
A little bit, but how many people are really running the newer versions of Linux on very outdated software? And what's the cost of running this outdated software? You know, keeping this outdated support in.
This is incredible, though, isn't it? How backwards compatible is that? I mean, Microsoft are the people that are always said to have the most backwards compatible stuff. The fact the Linux kernel was even supporting, up to its most recent version, 486 and very early Pentium chips anyway, is incredible. I mean, we're talking 1990... I'd say early 90s to mid. So, and these were, for me, this is my first computer, is just ended support here, and that was over 30 years ago that I bought that. And fair play, well done, Linus or whoever was keeping this in the kernel up to now. They've certainly given people plenty of warning. I remember the warnings coming up about 5 years ago about end of 32-bit support, and this is only now that this is actually being dropped. So, incredible work to keep this going. And there's probably still some old 486 PC chugging away in a corner. But even that, would you be? I'd be too scared to update it, frankly.
Yeah, it's probably reached a point now where if you are running Linux on a 486, you don't want to touch it.
Yeah, it's good. It's held together with string and baling wire. But, you know, I would pour one out, but no, we've moved on from that era. But fair play.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Fair play. They've kept it in there long, possibly a little bit too long, but fair play.
What a take, as they say in Wales. Something that I wouldn't say fair play to is, and we hinted about this in our follow-up, is apparently the Apple Watch has been in significant global decline for 2 years now. And their summary is new features needed. But I'm not sure that's right. This was 9to5 Mac, by the way, saying that.
Yeah, I think... What do we think here? We spoke about it a little, you know, when we've done the trading updates and that actually... It's the same with the iPads, isn't it? They don't release new iPads. The iPad numbers drop. They bring out new iPads. People buy them again. It's kind of the same with the watches. They kept bringing out new watches, but they didn't really have a compelling story or reason. And a lot of people I see wearing them have generally got quite old ones. They're just not that bothered by it, because you look at the new one, it's like, to the untrained eye, looks the same. And so there hasn't been that compelling reason. I'm surprised we haven't got more monitors in them now. And you and I watched the video, didn't we, recently, of the introduction of the Apple Watch, and it largely looks the same. That's what it looks now. Everything's a bit faster, obviously, and the screens are a bit bigger and the bezels are thinner. But the actual premise of the Apple Watch hasn't changed hugely between, you know, its inception 10 years ago and where we are today.
Yeah. So in the article it says that shipments declined 19% year on year, and I think a lot of that is just what you said, that once you've got an Apple Watch, unless the battery is completely knackered, you've got no real compelling reason to upgrade, particularly if you're American, where you don't get the pulse ox sensor, for example, anymore. You're actually losing functionality based on things that have happened before. If you look at this year's watches, as you said, they're a bit thinner, but no real other sort of compelling reasons to upgrade. The Apple Watch Ultra didn't change at all, except it got a new colour. What is the reason people would rush out and buy an Apple Watch? I look at mine now and I think, do I really need this on my wrist, or would it be better off? We talked about this last week. I know roughly how many steps I take. You've got a Garmin smartwatch for monitoring your running and all the rest of it. People who are super into fitness have that anyway. It's just been a quite nice convenience product. That it doesn't change has been up till now an advantage, but It's 400 quid for the base model. It's got bits and pieces on it. Not the base model. There is an SE, I think. Still, I don't even know what's in that anymore. But it's not a very compelling product, is it?
It's not, and I don't think people need another product that they buy year on year. Yeah, I've not missed it, I must confess, and it's a bit sad in a way I've not missed it. I'm a tech person, but I'm happy not missed it. There is still an SE. I was just checking as you were talking just now, and that's from £220. But it's just another device to run, update, maintain. Another device that interrupts you while you're having a coffee with your friends, or you're in a meeting, or you're talking to your partner, or whatever it may be. And that's kind of why I've walked away from it. I just didn't really need it, and I just wear my smartwatch when I go for a run, and then I take it off and I put it on the side, and I go. Well, I haven't actually got a watch on at the moment, but I normally go back to an analog watch. So for me, I'm done with it. It was nice while I had it. I've enjoyed it a little bit, but actually, I haven't missed it.
It's interesting, and you sort of grasp on something that I think we're seeing more of in the modern world. This sort of concept of getting back to basics and cutting a lot of the fripperies and things that we did. And there's certainly been a movement recently to things like this Lightphone 3, and there's been a bit of buzz about it online. So for those that are not watching the video, this is like a cut down phone that is basically, it's a color screen, although it looks like it's only like a e-reader or something like that. So it only really shows sort of black and white with very minimal functions on it. It can be a phone, you can send SMSs, you can take notes on it, you can use it as a hotspot, and not much more than that. Fairly limited directions, but no email, no music. Music you can sync to it, but not streamed. It's a fairly basic device. Have you seen this sort of move?
Yeah, I have. There is one that I've seen before called the Minimal Phone. I don't know if you've seen or heard of this. And actually, I quite like the look of it. Part of me is tempted with something like this, I must confess, because I think I joked with you recently, if you look at my phone, there's barely anything on my phone, because I'm trying to be more purposeful with it. When I pick up my phone, I'm doing an action, banking, whatever it may be, and then I try and put my phone away, and then if I want to spend time at the computer, I sit in front of one of my many computers. I'm trying to be more present when I'm with somebody rather than being on my phone. I think the big thing holding me back though is taking photos. I do like taking photos, and I don't know if I want another big camera.
So the Lightphone takes photos. I don't think it takes very good ones, but there's a very good YouTube video from Becca Versace, who used to work at The Verge, where she tries to use one of these for a month. And what she found is that modern life is so predicated on you having a phone. You want to call an Uber. This isn't going to do that for you. You want to use two-factor authentication to check your email. This isn't going to do that for you. And it's those sort of real edge cases that you don't think you run into a lot, but you actually do. And what they seem to be is an adjunct to somebody who already has another device that can do those things. So you've got enough money to have a fully featured smartphone, and you can maybe take one of these with you when you're going on a night out to show how minimal you've become. And I think there's a real difference between I'm going to cut distractions out of my life, which would mean that I'm getting rid of a smartphone, I'm going back to a Nokia from 30 years ago, 20 years ago, as versus something like this, which is just a phone plus, isn't it? And I kind of question this. If you're going to do it. You'd be better managing the notifications on your existing devices better than trying to buy a device to solve a problem that you don't really have.
Yeah, so that's where I've ended up. I've turned off lots of notifications because I think I would miss the convenience of Apple Pay or Google Pay, the camera, the iMessaging with my family. And so that's where I've ended up, in that actually I probably would like something like this, but it would frustrate me in the end. And therefore, how do I make my phone work for me? And I think I'm largely there with it.
It's a good place to be. I'm not. I mean, I love my smartphone and I use it for so many parts of my life. I manage all sorts of things. My car wouldn't start, for example. Again, I could just pick up the key card and use that, couldn't I? So all these things can be managed. There's about expectations. But I think that mindfulness that we're all sort of trying to get back to a little bit, because we are overwhelmed with continuous notifications on our phones through the day, should be managed better. And that's my sort of feeling on it.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And like I say, I think I've got to my happy place. Yeah.
Somebody who might be getting more towards a happy place is Microsoft. They've announced some new laptops this week. So this is featured from an article on The Verge in Ars Technica by Andrew Cunningham, where they've increased the prices a little bit. They've dropped a couple of connectors, and they've dropped some new Surface laptops. Did you get a look at this?
Just briefly, I mean, look at that picture though. It does look like you're looking at an Apple device, does it not? Admittedly, they've got a nice bolder purpley colour there, though. I'll give them that. I always quite like some of the Surface hardware. I think they make quite nice equipment. I do know some of the Go laptops were massively underpowered, so hopefully this corrects some of that. But they look good devices if that's your thing, but not for me.
Yeah, so the cheaper ones in this lineup are now using the Snapdragon X, as were introduced last year as Copilot Plus PCs. So I think they'll have enough moxie from that point of view to run things that are compatible. Microsoft have done less well on the translation layer. There's no their Rosetta equivalent isn't as good. There's still lots of things that don't work on the Surface laptops, but the battery life is certainly better from everything I've heard about them. Just that compatibility worry. Even though they've made it a little bit more expensive, they've dropped some stuff off it. I think they're pretty enough. I think Microsoft made good quality laptops. Again, there's been a couple of videos from people who were Mac switchers going back and trying Windows Copilot laptops, and just watching them try and get them installed. One guy, F-Stoppers I think was the name of the channel, it took him 45 minutes to get to the point of buying the new laptop, to updating itself, to actually get to the point he even managed to log into the thing. And that was in a top spec Surface Pro, Snapdragon, whatever laptop. And you just think, well, that's not right.
It's not a great first run, is it?
I mean, we're going to talk about new devices in the main show a little bit, and I'm sure your experiences of logging into a new Apple equipment doesn't take 45 minutes. There we go then. Should we do some media?
Yeah, let's do some media. This has been a good week for media.
It's been not bad. So this is more recommendations from me, I got to say, this week than things I've managed to watch. I've been away, I've been at a conference. Sitting on trains isn't the best time to stream stuff, and I had work to do. So unfortunately, I haven't actually got a lot of watching done this week, but there's some potential, other than shout out to Taskmaster and shout out to Race Across the World, which I have managed to catch up on, and both were excellent.
Yes, I would agree. Actually, and my kids... It was nice to watch Taskmaster and looking over at my 11-year-old and just seeing him chuckling to himself, which doesn't do often. And it was nice because some of the tasks just caught him. So it was nice to see.
But what's back, and I haven't had a chance to watch it, as I said, is Charlie Berman and Ewan McGregor with their wonderful motorbike show. New home on Apple TV. It obviously started out on the BBC, I think, is where A Long Way Round started, but has since transitioned to Apple TV Plus. They did A Long Way Up, involving electric cars and motorcycles going from Ushuaia in southern South America, the very tip of South America, all the way to Mexico City. And this time they're doing Long Way Home on classic motorcycles, where they're leaving Edinburgh, I think, going to go over, I think, 13 or 14 countries and come back to London is the plan.
Yeah, so this is quite cool. Basically, they're setting off from Ewan's house, and then they're going to come back to Charlie's house via a lot of 17 countries in Europe. It's quite a cool thing. Now, I would love to do something like this. I'm not a motorbike person, but I'd like to do this in my car. I think that would be awesome. I've actually watched both these episodes that have dropped. So for once, I'm ahead on media, which makes a change. If you've seen the other shows, you'll enjoy this. If you know, they just seem like two nice guys that just like meeting people and doing stuff. I hope that Ewan McGregor is actually this nicer guy in real life, because he seems like what he's like in real life. So yeah, it's quite cool.
I hope so too. And this resonates a bit more with me. I've met Charlie Berman in real life, and I have done a motorcycle trip, not on this sort of thing, but a little bit around Europe. So I would totally love to go and do something like this myself with one of my mates. And ironically, Charlie has really struggled of late because he had a couple of awful motorcycle crashes not that long ago. Neither of them are getting any younger, and I'm sure, and you certainly saw it in Long Way Up, he was really struggling with the bikes, and I presume that's continued, because it doesn't get really easier that Charlie, needs to take it a little bit easier. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching this.
Yeah, first episode they do cover his, he covers his accident, because obviously he's looking for a bike and he doesn't want it to be, I'm not going to get the right, is it like a jump start where you have to jump on the bike? And obviously kickstart, so that's not good for him. But it is quite cool. I've definitely enjoyed it, and like I said, I'm not a big motorbike person, but I think it's cool. It's nice.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if they put people off slightly last time by doing electric motorcycles and getting the company putting charging points all the way across South America. It's a bit more back to their roots, this, I think. Yeah,
but in a way, though, I guess it's good they've spiced it up each time rather than doing the same thing. They've added a different element. What is interesting in this one is they are keeping the same electric recovery vehicles. They've got the director and producer, they've got the Rivians, sometimes following them or meeting up with them. They've kept those, which I thought was quite cool.
That's interesting. Are Rivians legal in the UK then?
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I've never seen a Rivian in the UK, so yeah, that is interesting. No, that's another reason to go and watch it.
Yep, but it's definitely worth a watch. Would get my endorsement.
For me, another thing that's coming back is Foundation. Some very, very strong science fiction. You can't believe this is all done on a TV budget. It just shows how much money Apple have got, really. I don't know if you've watched Foundation, Chris.
No, this is one where I'm not ahead. So my lead of the week is just massively squandered because I'm 2 seasons behind.
It's fine. This is fine because it's not actually out yet. It's not out till July the 11th, so you've got a bit of time to catch up. It looks glorious, this. The acting is terrific. You know, you've got Lee Pace in this, and you've got Jared Harris, who you might know from Mad Men and Chernobyl and others. It is an amazing-looking show, based on an Isaac Asimov books from, well, the last century. It's phenomenal. Very hard science fiction, really interesting characters, very well written. Yeah, if you fancy something a bit different in the science fiction realm, Foundation's worth checking out.
I do need to catch up on this one. I'd like to read the books as well.
Fair enough. You have something you've presumably managed to watch.
I've put something in. So continue with our Apple TV bent. I have watched the first 6 episodes of Your Friends and Neighbours, which is all about the main character, John Hamm, his wife leaves him, he loses his job, he's having a bit of a full-on midlife crisis. Quite a cool cast, quite a good show, quite enjoyable, a little bit funny. Actually quite enjoying it. So, and I would agree with I put the Rotten Tomatoes links in at 80-odd%. I think that's fair. But I think it's all right. I quite like John Hamm, obviously, who's in Mad Men that you just mentioned. Yeah, I thought it was quite good. It was just something light-hearted to put on while I was doing some other work, and I've generally quite enjoyed it and stuck with it, and like I say, continued with all the episodes.
Unusual that both the critics and the audience agree on 81%. I got to say that. John Hamm's first TV sort of leading role since Mad Men. So yeah, interesting.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's appeared in episodes of things, but he's gone off and been a movie star, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he was in the morning show as well as a side character for a period.
But now, as leading man, this is his first time back. Yeah, this looks quite interesting. I got to say, there's a problem with stickiness in some Apple TV stuff. Like The Studio, I started watching. I watched 3 episodes of. I appreciated it for what it was, but I'm in no compelling sort of need to go back and watch it. The same with that thing set in Cambridge. Prime Target. I watched 3 episodes of that. I'm like, it's a bit boring now. So that sort of ramp-off factor is really quite high in lots of Apple TV things. Yeah,
I think that's fair. This one I did stick with. I watched the first one and thought, okay. And then the second one got me hooked, I think. I just quite enjoyed the premise of it.
All good. You have another Apple TV show?
I am. I'm going to round out on Dope Thief. So I mentioned I started watching this. I've now watched it all the way through. And again, it's not something I'd normally go for, but actually thoroughly enjoyed it. Great cast, a bunch of people I haven't seen anything else, but just really well done. I think it's about 8 episodes, which was about the right length. It just was a good story, and I thought they landed the ending really well. And I would agree with the ratings again. Actually, if you just go back up to the ratings slightly, they're both 86 as well on Rotten Tomatoes. So yeah, would recommend Dope Thief just for something completely different to watch. It was quite cool.
Yeah, I got to say, this doesn't appeal to me. I mean, you're trying to sell it to me, but I'm just a bit.
It didn't appeal to me either, by the way, and I can't explain why I put it on, but I did, and I just quite liked it. And you kind of feel really sorry for the guys because they're not the smartest of people.
Oh dear. All right. Well, maybe if I find time for it, maybe I'll give it a go. I need to finish Silo first, really.
I haven't watched Silo, so I've got Silo and Foundation that I haven't started or seen, and I think they're 2 that I should attempt.
Sticking with Apple TV again.
Yeah, it's Apple TV's week. And this literally just dropped before we recorded. So this is the final trailer for the Formula One movie that's coming out, which I really want to see because I've been at Silverstone when they filmed bits of it. I like Formula One. It's looking okay. Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. This isn't going to be the best film. It's not going to win any Oscars. But it's looking all right. And I kind of want to see, do they land it? And it's great for me to hear the real commentators that do the F1 in the film, and some of the real Formula One drivers are in it, and I've just noticed today it's got Javier Bardem in it as the team principal by the looks of it. So it's fantastic. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this, and it comes out on June the 25th, so not long to go.
Interesting. All right, I'm going to chuck one just so we don't have it all an Apple TV takeover here. That if you find yourself with a couple of minutes and some time on YouTube, and for the listeners too, it's worth having a look at the best MotoGP moments from the French Grand Prix, which happened yesterday on Sunday. If you've ever seen chaos take place in a motorcycle or any sort of race, this is worth a little bit of your time. Not to give too much away, but it rained just as they were starting up. They had to change bikes. There were penalties. There were double long lap penalties. People were changing onto slicks, off slicks, rain tires, in and out of it, all the way through it. And so I'm not completely spoiling everything, and I think I can hear a little bit, Chris, if you're watching that. Hopefully you can mute that.
I can't mute the massive aeroplane that's flying over my house. I apologise.
Over my headphones, it sounds like that. What's something happening? But I'm going to say this. There were 2 French riders in this race. This is the first chance a French rider has had to win the French round of the MotoGP since 1955.
Wow. And you always want the home hero to win, don't you? I think it's quite cool.
Neither of them on bikes that are capable of winning the race.
Oh, okay.
And this is 6 minutes of your time. And if you just want to see some drama and some human emotions and just an incredible thing, just spend a little 6 minutes of your time on YouTube and watch some actual racing for a change.
Yep. So I'm just making a note, so I might do that straight after this.
Good man. And last but not least, but just to return to our Apple TV themes, I'm quite excited by this incoming thing on Apple TV called Murderbot. It has one of the Skarsgårds in it, Alexander, who plays a robot whose purpose is to save some human settlers on a planet from various nasty bits of indigenous life, but actually develops a personality of his own and starts watching sitcoms and things and becomes more of a person than what's going on. I just think it's a funny premise. Again, as for Apple TV science fiction often is, it looks extremely well made, and I'm quite excited for it.
It sounds a little bit like iRobot. Advanced kind of thing.
A little bit, but with a sense of humour. I don't think iRobot that had any sense of fun in it.
Yeah, it's kind of to me it sounds like iRobot version 2.
Maybe,
2.0,
maybe.
I guess.
Anyway, it's out on Friday. Check out the trailer. See what you think about it. It made me smile, just the trailer, so I'm going to give it a shot.
Okay, that's cool. I think, to be fair, though, Apple TV is having a little bit of a good run at the minute, so I don't feel bad that we are, that we are giving them a bit of praise and a bit of attention. Even
though maybe big American company, we shouldn't be giving them money, as we've talked about before, and I haven't bought any other hardware recently, so I feel better about that anyway.
Okay, fair enough. Should we move on to games?
Let's move on to games. So this is just a PSA. I quite like Balatro. I don't know, have you heard of the game Balatro, Chris?
Only through you, and I get it for free on Apple Arcade Plus, or whatever it's called, and I still haven't played it.
Well, that's just shameful. Anyway, PSA. If you're a PS Plus subscriber, you get it for free this month on PS Plus. So, for those of you, 3 of you that might listen to us and are and don't know about it, get out there and get some Balatro on, because it's a terrific game.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and I think it's my fault I've not played it because it's landed really well with a lot of people.
Another thing that's free this week on PlayStation Plus, but is also available on Steam and others, as was Balatro, is Warhammer 40,000 Bolt Gun. Now, I am not a Warhammer person. I've never painted a miniature in my life. I don't know anything about tabletop gaming. I know a little bit about the lore from early sort of 90s computer games and things like that. I think I've got a Warhammer Total War game on Steam as well. But this is free, so PSA, but also caught my eye because of its sort of very early Doom sort of look. It's got a bit of a 8-bit, early 8-bit, 16-bit going on thing with it. Very sort of classic first-person shooter, run around and shoot things in a Doom sort of way. And that kind of appealed to me, actually. It's got fairly good ratings on Metacritic. Looks like a lot of fun, fairly disposable, and I'm going to check it out.
It does look very reminiscent of games you and I would have played on our beige 486s. That's the vibe I'm getting from it.
Yeah, obviously it is an awful lot better animated than Doom was, and I presume you can look up and down, but this looks right up my street.
Yeah, it does look kind of cool.
There you go. So Warhammer Bolt Gun. And you have news from Nintendo.
I was just going to do my PSA. I did manage to bag a Nintendo Switch 2 pre-order, which I'm a little chuffed about. So on target at the moment for 6th of June delivery. I fully appreciate that may slip, but I'm pretty excited. So hopefully I'm going to get a Nintendo Switch 2, which will be cool. And I'm just debating whether I sell my Switch 1 now before this comes out. Maybe I'll get a few quid for it.
You're very opportunistic for that kind of thing, I got to say.
I'm just trying to balance the book so I feel less guilty about buying a £430 console. I think I paid for it here in the UK with Mario Kart World, because there's no point in having a Switch without Mario Kart World.
I agree. You sent me the link to this when the pre-orders were there. I was in the middle of my conference, so I didn't do anything about it other than I clicked on the link and I looked at the price and I thought, my gosh, that's a lot of money for a console that I might not use that much.
Yeah, I'm optimistic because I've got quite a bit on the Switch that I think I'll be able to port over. So I'm comfortable with it, I think. And if I could sell my Switch, maybe just get a little bit of money back, it would just take the edge off buying this one.
Yeah, Mario Kart's great. The Zelda games will be great, but I think other than Mario Kart and maybe Donkey Kong, there's not that much new stuff coming, is there, initially?
I think you're correct there. And there wasn't when the Switch came out. There was very little that came initially. So I'm curious to see. So I'm comfortable with my purchase here, and I think there will be enough of a catalogue coming.
Fair enough. Main show?
Let's do it.
Well, I guess it's largely over to you for the first part. Let's tell us what we're doing, Chris.
So we're going to talk. You and I both made some hardware acquisitions, two quite different hardware acquisitions, but equally quite similar in some ways as well. So we've both acquired new laptops. So I historically haven't had a laptop really for a while. I had a MacBook for a while that I used on and off, but I've gone, right, I'm going to go and get a laptop. I want to do a lot more coding. I want to do a bit just more techie stuff on the go. So I've gone and bought a laptop, and I think you're in a similar place. And I'll let you talk about yours when we come to yours. But I thought we'd cover mine first because mine's not that exciting. Because we're all going to know what it is. It's probably one of the biggest selling laptops in the world at the moment. It's not very bespoke. So I've gone and bought a midnight MacBook Air M4 model it's the M4, so it's the pretty good one. It's the latest one you can get. I've gone the 13-inch route. I've got 512 gig SSD in it, and I did manage to get a slightly bit more RAM. I managed to get it on sale, so it's saved about £250 here in the UK. And you know what? I powered this up the other week. What a device. I took it out of the box. So I did debate, am I going to use it? Am I going to return it? And as soon as I saw it, I was like, no, this is staying. It's beautiful. What a device. I did weigh up for a while whether to get the slightly bigger 15-inch one because I want to do a bit of coding on it. But I elected in the end, actually, if I'm going to be doing a serious session, I'll plug it into a monitor or I use my desktop. I wanted portability. I wanted something that I wouldn't mind chucking in the bag. And what a device to do it. It's just beautiful. The fit, the finish, like for Apple's cheapest laptop. Like this laptop is cheaper than a reasonably spec'd iPhone. It's a lot of laptop for the money, I think. And I just love it. It's look how thin it is. I'm going to hold it up to the camera for you. It's just incredible. So yeah, super chuffed with that. And I've bought it for a bit of coding, a bit of iWork that I do. I do a bit of numbers and pages and what have you. Obviously, web browsing is going to be a big one. Based upon your nagging, I've moved over to Firefox as well. So trying to be a responsible citizen there. But so I unboxed this the other day. I started setting it up, and I thought Macs were now meant to do that thing, where it pops up and go, if you hold your phone nearby, we get the Wi-Fi off it and link your account and things. But this one didn't come with the latest OS installed on it, so that was a little frustrating. I think that Apple haven't quite got to that bit yet where they're flashing their devices to have the latest OSs on it. Because there was talk about that. I think it's more for iPhone, so they come, as patched up as possible. So I bought it. The hardware is fantastic. What can I say? It's just beautiful. I did wonder about the packaging though. I must say, I've made a note here. The box is really deep, and actually I don't really need the power supply for it because everything's USB-C these days. And that was my one thought of they should really ship these in much skinnier boxes, more like the iPad. It just feels a bit wasteful. Even though the screen is not their best screen that they do, it's fantastic. It's a really good screen. It's not as bright as some. It doesn't do fast refresh rates, but it's a great screen and most people won't notice. It's not a gaming device at all. But yeah, I'm super chuffed with it. And I just enjoy using it. It's a lovely device just to use, I must confess. And even my son, who is very much a PC gaming person, was quite curious by the hardware design and was keen to have a play with it. So that's what I've gone and bought. I don't think there's a huge amount to talk about because it just runs macOS, and I'm quite looking forward to getting whatever the next version of macOS. And I've got a device I can play with it on, when the betas come out, because I know I want to fiddle with it. Whereas obviously I want to keep my studio tidy. Not my studio, my Mac Mini tidy, so that we can record and not have any issues. So it's good. I can have one machine that's clean and one machine that I can play with a little bit.
Yeah, we never have any issues recording the podcast with our very expensive hardware, do we?
None whatsoever. So that was my rundown on what I've gone and got.
So what's the thinking this? It's because you want to code on it. That's why you bought a laptop.
I want to code. I want to just get a bit more techie. I want to build some websites, do some, graphics and stuff, but not just sat at my desk. I want to go out and about and do stuff. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and get something like this. And it is a lot of device. You talk about £1,000, which is a lot of money, but like I say, you'll blow that out of an iPhone easily, and some people every year. So actually, I think it is good value for money. And that M4 is insane. It just feels so snappy to use. But yeah, just a bit more portable machine. So if I'm with the family and they're working or, gaming or whatever they're doing, I can just do something without having to come down to my shed.
I'm all for it. Other than giving Apple the money at the moment, I think I'm all for it. I think having something like this is far more utility than an iPad. An iPad, no matter how often you've told me, I still view as a consumption device, whereas this is a production device. And it's got that huge battery, better battery than you've ever had in your iPad. You can install almost anything on it within reason. You can edit a video, you can edit a podcast, you can write some stuff in Xcode, you can run a nice browser, you can install, Homebrew and put all sorts of stuff on there. I'm with you. I think concerns about the company aside, I think this is the best laptop, the most complete laptop Apple have ever made. It's a good enough screen. It's got great battery. It's got a very powerful chip. The SSDs could be a bit bigger for a bit cheaper, but I'm not going to complain about that. They can charge what they want for producing hardware of this quality. I think it's a no-brainer almost to be in the Apple ecosystem, that if you need a new laptop, the 13-inch is what you get. I don't see the point in the 15-inch, that what you want is portability, and as you've said, you can plug it into a screen. So I'm with you on this. I think this is a great choice of a laptop.
I only debated the 15-inch just because it's about £150 more, I think, maybe 200. But I debated it just because the extra screen real estate, but it just didn't feel as nice to sit with. It just didn't float. I don't know. I just didn't have that appeal to want to buy it as much as the other one. But they are great devices, and it's half the price that I paid for my iPad when I bought it fully loaded. And I think I've realised I don't need most of Apple's Pro devices anymore, because I'm not the pro that they're going after. I don't shoot 4K. I just want to be able to code and do things reasonably quickly, and their base level stuff seems to do that for me.
And you'll be able to do some stuff like install Docker containers and learn some stuff about that for your websites. That this is how development is done these days. It's into an environment that you know something about. You'll be able to try out things like Cursor, and some LLMs on there to help your coding and all the rest of it. Run your own local LLMs, which I know you can do in your Mac Mini, but you didn't want to mess with that because it's your podcasting machine. So I think you have a bit of mileage now to go and learn some stuff about some of the technologies that have been sort of developing around that you really haven't had a chance to sort of check out because of the situation you found yourself in with your computing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I want to keep my Mac Mini as my podcasting/server machine, and I think that will work out right. And then the MacBook Air I can install things on, and then if I need to wipe it and start again, I can. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. A bit more playing with some techie stuff, I think, because it's time I got back into that. I'm
amused to see how much of this page is still dominated by Apple Intelligence on the MacBook Air page.
Yeah, I'm not bothered by that.
It's quite depressing, really, that the first thing I go and do in any Mac I come across these days is switch off the Apple Intelligence options.
Yeah, it's quite depressing that they're still really banging the drum, and it's not lived up to what it should have lived up to.
Yeah. So anything else to say about the machine other than I think you picked the right colour?
I did debate the colour, and the sky blue is nice, but only in some lights. The midnight one really spoke to me, so very happy with the colour. I just think their hardware game is so good. And I know they've been making laptops for a long time, but for their cheapest laptop, it's a fantastic piece of kit. It's so good. It feels like a £2,000 device, not a £1,000 device. It's really good.
Fair. Should we do mine?
Yes, your story is much more exciting.
I don't know, really. So I went and I bought a 13-inch framework laptop. That's what I bought.
Looks good.
Which I've talked about before in light of this podcast, just to show you. I'll go through the specs in a minute, but that's his party trick, is you can pull out these ports and put whatever you want in its place. So that's enough on that. Other than it's a 13-inch laptop, it's a little bit thicker than Chris's, but let's go on that. So first things first, this is exactly what I bought. For the watchers of the podcast, I'll try and talk through it as I do. I bought the DIY edition, which means you need to build it yourself. It comes without anything installed in it other than the screen. So no keyboard, no RAM, no SSD, nothing screwed together particularly. No bezel on the front to put it together. So I bought the DIY edition. I bought the new AMD Ryzen chip. So I went for the base model AI300 chip. If you're buying one of these now, it's going to take you a little bit longer to get one. They're saying ships Q2, but it'll slip. This is batch 7. I bought batch 1, and I only got mine 2 weeks ago, so I think you're going to be waiting a little bit for the current versions of these. So I went for the base model, which is 6-core, 12-thread, up to 4.8 gigahertz. I think that actually compares fairly favorably with what you've got in the MacBook Air there. It's not a million miles away. I went for the 2.8K display, so more or less a 4K display, which is a 13.5-inch, 2256 by 1504, tell a lie, 2880 by 1920 120 hertz display, so it's a beautiful screen that gets up to a very decent brightness, I must say, comparable with a Mac screen. In fact, I think it even refreshes a little bit faster than a MacBook Air, because a MacBook Air is 60 hertz, I think.
Yes, correct. No, this screen's way better than the MacBook Air screen that I've got.
I plumped for 32 gigs of RAM, because why wouldn't you just have 32 gigs of RAM in a laptop? And of course the beauty is, should I wish to go up to 48 gigs or more, I can actually do that with this laptop. I can just pop the keyboard off, 5 screws and pop the keyboard off, and get in there, and I can put in more RAM should I choose to. If you want to, you can buy from Framework, and they don't charge a ridiculous amount for RAM, 320 gigs, and put 2 times 48 gigs of RAM in there. That would be quite a lot of RAM. Do Apple even go up that high with their memory? I don't think so.
Not with the MacBook Air, maybe with the Pro ones, but I don't think anybody can ever afford it though.
No. I didn't put any storage in this because I already had some of my own. So I had a 2 terabyte memory stick SSD lying around. It is this 850X NVMe, which Framework charged 250 quid for, but because I had one lying around, I didn't need to put Spring for that. I didn't put an operating system on there because I was going to put Linux on it, and I went for the translucent purple bezel just because it looks quite nice, and I will try and show that for the camera for those that can potentially see it.
Yeah, that's going to be hard to show, isn't it?
You might just be able to see there.
Yeah, I can see it now. I can see it. That's cool.
And as it opened there, you can see what I've got on there is Fedora Linux. For those that know the Linuxes, so that's Fedora 42 Linux. So is there anything else in the hardware? I went for the British English keyboard, and I told you the expansion cards. I got 2 USB-Cs, 1 USB-A, and an HDMI. And should I choose to, I can buy additional ones for £9 for expansion card. That came to 1,199 quid, which I don't think was an unreasonable amount of money for a laptop of this quality.
So we've spent similar amount of money here on our 2 laptops. Obviously mine came with some storage and yours didn't, but obviously you've put far more in. I noticed you didn't get an Ethernet expansion card. Is there any reason for that?
Well, part of that is because I'm used to running Macs, which don't have such fancy things. So I've got lots of these kinds of things lying around. So this, for example, is a 2.5 gigabyte Ethernet adapter, which I can plug in at USB-C. So I've got that if I needed it. If I wanted to get Ethernet, I could have, but why would I when I've got these lying around?
No, that's fair. I've got something similar. And I do think it is great that you could do the expansion. So is there anything planned upgrades you want to do in the future, or is this more you've bought what you need for the next 18 months and then maybe then you can swap the chip or upgrade the RAM?
It's exactly that, really. Part of it is I wanted to buy a higher quality laptop on the PC side of the fence rather than the Mac side of the fence to see what it was like. Could I do my work with it? Could I travel with it? Could I do the things that I do with a Mac all the time, and to see how it would hold up? It's never fair comparing like something you've bought off eBay to run one of these things on with what is more state of the art. And to be fair, there's a couple of assumptions I made in this. No laptop I bought on the PC side is ever going to get close to Apple's battery life because their energy efficiency. x86 chips just can't do that. And also, because Apple glues everything into the laptops, they can squange a lot of battery in there. So you end up with 70, 80, 99 kilowatt hour batteries built into the laptops. So not only have you got a more efficient chip, but they tend to have bigger batteries in there too. So I was not anticipating it going anywhere near the battery life of a modern Mac.
No, I can see that. But you can buy an upgrade, can't you?
Well, that's the thing. It's only got a 61 kilowatt hour battery in it. Which is okay. I'll be honest and say I probably get about 4 to 4.5 hours battery life using it on about 50% screen brightness. But should I knacker it by leaving it plugged in all the time or just having too many charge cycles, for about 50 quid I can buy another battery take the laptop's keyboard off and bang in another battery. It's 7 screws. So that's quite a big deal.
That is a huge deal because it's always the battery that goes first, isn't it? No matter how well you look after a laptop, the battery's going to go at some point.
And there's some quite nice features like built into the BIOS of the laptop where you can say limit the charge on this just to 80% max and it won't go past it. So you can try and preserve your battery as well instead of running it up to 100% all the time.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, isn't it? I like the sound of that.
Yeah, so that's nice. And of course, I'm free to install any operating system. I could have put Windows on there if I wanted. I didn't want to put Windows on there. So Fedora is what's going on there at the moment. It's a variant of Red Hat. It's kind of the testing version of what used to be Red Hat Linux. It's quite up to date. They move the kernel around quite a lot. I think for people that care, it's got 6.14-5 at the moment, which is about as up to date as you get in Linux kernels. I'm running Fedora 42, like I said. At the point I wrote the show notes, I was running GNOME 48, but I've actually flipped over to KDE, which is another desktop environment. I think we talked about these in our Linux episode way back when. I'm running LibreOffice, the current version of Firefox, which is what I'm using on the Mac to record this at the moment as well. Steam with a couple of games. I'll talk about the next thing in a minute, and the Fish shell. So that's kind of mostly what I'm running. I want to come back to the Waydroid. Any questions about any of that?
What's the Fish shell?
So if you fire up the terminal on your Mac, you'll find it's running a thing called Z shell, I think is the default on the Mac currently. Switching away from Bash, which is the born-again shell for Linux people, this is fairly important. Basically, they all do more or less the same thing, but it's like if you want to script with them or connect certain things, it's quite important to know what shell you're running underneath. I'm running the Fish shell because it looks really nice and you can theme it, and maybe I'll put a couple of pictures in the show notes, or a couple of pictures in the show notes for people to see. But it gives you lots of prompts. So like you've always been able to tab complete things in shell. So if you type SSH and hit tab, it will come up with some options afterwards for what you've done before. This actually looks at your history as well, and if you've done a connection to a remote server, it will actually remember all the parameters around that as well, and you're able to tab or arrow through your options to actually get it to complete the thing you want. So it's like shell for beginners. I don't need it all, but it just makes your life a little bit easier.
Fair enough. Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. On the Mac, by the way, I recommend iTerm and iTerm 2. So for your new Mac, I'd say go out and get iTerm and put a pretty theme on there. I'll maybe leave some links about how to theme your terminal so it looks a lot cooler. I don't know, are you a terminal kind of guy, Chris, or are you arrows mouse?
Less of a terminal guy. Obviously, I came up through DOS, but no, on the Mac, I've used it sparingly, I guess.
I think in this whole new world, you're going to have to get used to typing again.
100%, and I kind of want to get back to some of that way.
Waydroid, I'm coming back to, because leaving a Mac means that actually it's a problem on Macs anyways. You'll discover if you're an iPad or an iPhone user and you want to do things like, download some BBC iPlayer before you go somewhere. You can't do that easily on a computer. They expect you to have a lockdown iPad or iPhone or Android phone to do that. One of the beautiful things that I can do with a Linux machine, though, is I can install Android in a container, and I can install Google Apps on that, and I can make it think it's an Android phone or an Android tablet, and I'm able to take my Prime, my BBC iPlayer, my whatever shows away with me, just a container on my laptop, and I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, okay, that is quite cool. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, so I've got that facility without having that. I mean, I've got them on my phone, obviously, but just as a thought exercise and what can you do with a more open-ended piece of hardware, that's quite an interesting thing to be able to do.
Yeah, no, I can see that because I've noticed that certainly use my Mac a little bit more. I'm like, oh yeah, I've got all the apps that you can just download things to and take them with you.
Yeah. Ultimately, what you want in a laptop is a portable thing where you can get whatever tasks you're going to need to be able to get done. And so far, this has allowed me to do that. There are a couple of pain points. You get used to being in the Apple ecosystem that, I'll just answer my messages on my computer. Oops, can't do that anymore. But it hasn't been nearly as bad as I thought it was, and getting used to another way of working, GNOME in this case, is very sort of keyboard based, sort of tile windows, move things around, flip on extra desktops and all the rest of it. It's very, very smooth, and I've enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, it does sound good. What are you missing though from your Mac, or is there anything big that's
I think
not there?
Biggest thing is Linux really isn't as good as media as Macs are. So, for example, recording this podcast I'd probably be able to do using OBS or something like that, or an alternative, Audacity, something. It would be possible to record the audio and the video and something else. Editing it would take me an awful lot longer, but the video editing would be a problem. And more than that, things like Marco Arment's app Forecast for putting in subtitles, markers, and chapter art and all the rest of it. I'm sure it's possible to do that on Linux, but I've got no idea how. And in the hurly-burly of trying to get this done as well as having a full-time job, I'm not sure I can be bothered to learn. So at the moment I'm in a position, if I can do 80% of my day-to-day computing tasks on Linux, and I've got to drop back to the Mac for a couple of things until I get more comfortable with it, or until Apple sort the lives out and I feel comfortable endorsing the company more fully again. That's kind of where I am. I've paid for this hardware now, so I'm happy to use it for the things that I need it to. But for most of my computing tasks, I'm hitting Linux at the moment and this laptop. Cool.
And are you enjoying being a largely Linux user?
I really am. I think it's fun. Again, the Mac OS hasn't really changed in the last, what should we say, 12, 13 years. Things have got a little bit faster, batteries have got a bit more efficient. But fundamentally, the OS is as the OS was. Since Mac OS 10 has come along, it's not fun anymore. There's no discoverability to it, other than them breaking things, like settings getting worse every year. That's sort of what you can depend on. Bringing in notifications that I hate manage. Warning me that, functionality I took for granted, I have to say, no, allow this more regularly. It gets in my way more than it ever used to. I think when Apple were more permissive about these things and trusted me as a user to know what I wanted to do, I was a happier user of the system. I didn't question some of their choices. But actually being given the freedom to do what you want to do with your computer and it getting out of your way and allowing you to do it has been quite a revelation for me. And it reminded me of when I was a computer science student way back at the beginning, when everything was sort of interesting and a challenge and I was learning stuff. I'm kind of there again, as opposed to just, I'm here to do this one thing. It's just a different approach to computing and having a little bit of joy back in it. And so, don't get me wrong, with joy comes pain, but at the same time, I'm quite enjoying the challenge, I gotta say. And using a different tool for my work, for most of what I do in computers, it's been lovely, actually.
I must confess, I left the iPad largely for the last 5 years. The Mac for 5 years, came back to some of it. And I'm still using my iPad a lot, but it hasn't, like you say, hasn't changed. There's nothing like, let's go and try out all these new features. There's obviously stuff there every year, and it visually looks a little different, but it's not really different. So I can see the appeal of playing with something completely fresh. And when I first went to my iPad, I quite enjoyed the challenge of making my day-to-day work on a new device with a new set of constraints and freedom. It's a balance, isn't it?
It is. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, if it's all a complete disaster, I'll be able to sell this for losing almost nothing. Let's face it. They're in such demand, as I've proved with the website there, that I don't think it's really going to be a problem. But we'll see how we go. I'm pretty content at the moment.
I think the great thing with yours is 2 years from now, assuming you do keep it, and I've still got mine, I'll be like, right, I want to go get the M6 MacBook Air, and you're like, yeah, I might just swap out the processor card and get a new battery, and you'd spend a third of what I'm going to spend, and yours will feel like a new laptop, and I think that's the real payoff of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in the meantime, if I break something, I can just get a part and I can swap it out. It's quite an important thing, I think, that. Framework they make the laptops, but they actually make all the parts for them as well. So if the website was working, I'd show you that if you are looking for a new motherboard or a cable snapped, or you've done something to the screen like chipped it and broken it, I can get my version of the motherboard. It's not cheap, it's £800, but that's because it's the current version of the motherboard. If something else is on here, like I want a main board for one of the earlier ones, Framework laptop main board with an Intel chip in it, it's £399.
It's pretty good.
It's a couple of years old. And that gives you all the compute that you'd want, from that point. So I can have coolers, I can do, all these parts that are here for them. If you break any parts of them, with the bigger one, the bigger framework, you can swap out the video card in them. How many laptops can you do that with?
Well, I can't upgrade anything on mine, and that is the problem. I think with Apple equipment, you end up speccing it way higher than you need because you can't do anything with it once you've got it.
Yeah. So, for example, this is the chassis of my laptop. If my screen was still good and my mainboard was still good, for £399, I can just bang it into a new chassis if I've dented it irreparably or snapped something off. That's just incredible.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, new screen, £159.
Yeah, that feels insane, doesn't it?
And the really cool thing, and I think we talked about this before, is if I do get, if something awful happens or I buy another one or I go back to Apple, I can take the guts out of this machine. I can spend £39 on a case and I can turn it into a desktop PC.
That's also quite cool. Yeah, okay. I do like what they're doing at Framework. I think it's a cool idea.
And just last for you is the 3D printer. They've actually published this design online, so if you have a 3D printer, you can just print it yourself anyway and stick the guts of it into that.
This is right up my son's street. If it was a bit cheaper, I think it'd be a bit more child-friendly, but definitely up his street.
Absolutely. And you can play games on it too. I had a quick go at that. I can play Civ 7 at medium graphics quality. The fans come on. Of course, the fans come on. So it's a PC, but I can play it.
Yeah, I do need to fire up Civ 7 again now you've mentioned it. But I can play it probably on my MacBook Air, because that is a Mac-friendly game, but I'm so limited by the games, obviously, that are available for the Mac.
Yeah, I could probably play that bolt gun game from earlier.
That's cool. No, it looks really good, and I do like what they're trying to do at Framework. I think it's cool.
I agree. App of the week. So my app of the week this week is Link Warden. I mentioned before, I think on the podcast, my disquiet with the developer of Raindrop.io. I'm sure he's absolutely fine, but there was links there were Russia that were a bit sticky that I wasn't very comfortable with. I try to be more moral than I actually am, but there we go. So Link Warden is a service you can log into and make use of. Alternatively, you can actually self-host it, because they've released the code, because it's an open source project. So you can go to GitHub and you can download Link Warden and you can run it in a Docker container, which is what I do. So I've now got all the links for our show and my day-to-day bookmarking of everything will go into Link Warden. The nice thing about Link Warden is it does more than just capture the link. It will actually try and download elements of the website, so you can use it for offline reading as well. You can use it for archiving websites. You can do an awful lot with it. And I'm running it in my Docker estate as well. It was very easy to get up and running. And it's quite a full-featured preservation of links and bookmark manager. So, yeah, really cool. Very happy with it, and I'm using Link Warden.
It does look cool. And you and I have spoken about this before, of what do you do about gathering links or keeping links? Do you keep them in your browser? Should you get a service? So, no, I like the sound of it. It looks really good.
And it integrates with a shortcut on my iPhone as well. So I can fire a shortcut and it automatically goes from anything I'm looking at via the share sheet on my phone straight back to Link Warden, and it's almost instant. It's faster than Raindrop.
That's quite cool. Very clever.
Yep. So I'm a fan. Link Warden, check it out.
Thing of the week. So I've just put in something to go with my new laptop purchase. I didn't want to chuck it in my bag and it gets scratched. So I've bought a Tom Tok case. I was trying to find a Crumpler case because I had Crumpler when I was a kid, and it looks like Rod is holding up the exact one I've bought, which is a little bit odd because Rod didn't know I'd bought this until today. So there you go. So I've gone out and bought one of those. I got it for like £25. I think it's really nice quality. I just didn't want to chuck the laptop in the bag and it get dinged and scratched, and I'd be gutted. It's a bit chunkier than I would like, but hey ho, you've got to look after these things. So it's nicely made though, I must confess, and I love the orange accents on it. So and they're not a sponsor, by the way. It's just something that I've gone and bought, and I just think it's great because, like I say, I just want something just to be sure it doesn't get dinged.
Yeah, I bought mine 2 years ago. The same reason I didn't want my Macs at that point to get dinged or chipped or marked. They are chunky. There's quite a lot of cushioning in them. I have a laptop dedicated area on my rucksack, my Osprey rucksack, that I can put my laptop into, but the MacBooks are so thin it was flopping around inside of the laptop compartment, so I actually wanted something a bit thicker. This worked. It came with another little Tom Tok carrying case as well that I put my travel router in, which we should probably speak about at some point on the podcast too. But yeah, it's a good sleeve. It's stood up to the rigors of life for me for the last couple of years, so I think you'll have many happy months of years of ownership.
Yeah, I hope so. Like I say, I just want something so I could pull it under my arm and take my laptop out to the coffee shop or whatever I'm going to do that day.
Yeah, and I saw 3 or 4 other people at the conference was carrying them too, so we're not alone in this.
Yeah, it's a brand I've seen, but I've never owned anything from. But yeah, super pleased with it.
I think we can call that a show, Chris.
I think so. So if anyone wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at G5Maniac at Mastodon.scot. He's also on Blue Sky and he's at G5Maniac at bsky.social. I'm on Mastodon and I am at _CGP at Mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to our website and click on the YouTube link, or drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.